Welcome to this webinar from Dovetail Learning, Give Advice That Sticks. My name is Meri McCoy-Thompson, and I am the Executive Director, and I'm so happy to be with you today. Our mission here at Dovetail Learning is to strengthen the resilience in adults and children, and our vision is a world of kind, connected human beings. We promote the We Are Resilient approach, which is really about discovering how to be the best possible version of ourselves. And my slides are going crazy this morning. Okay, let's go backward. Sorry about that. Okay. A little bit about me before we go any further. I have two adult children who were recently married in the last few years, so that was pretty exciting. And as you know, full of opportunities for advice and not advice. I spent 7 years caring for my parents. My mother had Alzheimer's, and they both passed away in the last few years. So I've been through a lot of life transitions. I've also lived and worked with nonprofits all over the world, and my mission has always been to help empower others to live their best life, which is why I love training through Dovetail Learning, because that is really the heart of the mission about what we're all trying to do at Dovetail Learning. So as I said, today our webinar is on Give Advice That Sticks. And what we're going to be talking today about is curiosity. We'll also be talking a little bit about noticing myself, noticing others, heartfelt listening, empathizing, speaking authentically, and curiosity, because that is the key for everything. So, okay. The first thing we're going to talk about, as I said, is curiosity. So often when we run into situations in which we are going to be giving advice to someone, and I have to tell you, I have been in that situation a lot in my life. I think probably all of us have, right? For myself, I've done it in situations as a manager. I've been a manager most of the latter part of my career in one way or another. I have obviously done it as a friend. I've done it as a daughter, a mother, as a spouse. So many opportunities to give advice if we want to in our life. And so often we can feel like we're saying all these wonderful things, and if only everybody could hear it, the world would be a better place. And that's why it's important to start with curiosity, because so often we come in with judgments. Okay, this person needs to be doing this. I think someone needs to be doing this. Somebody tells us something, we hear it, we rush right into judgment about how it should be, how people should go about what we think they should do. And being able to pause that judgment and come up with a different way of viewing the situation is the first most important part of giving advice that sticks. So how do we pause that judgment? We use our resilient mindset of curiosity and move right into, instead of, I know the fix, I know the solution, they should do X, move into really thinking about, what don't I know about this, right? A very important part of our resilient mindset of curiosity. And we move in first into curiosity. What don't I know about myself? How am I being? So I could be in a situation with a colleague, and I've done this throughout the year, and we're talking, and I immediately think, oh, they should do X. And sometimes it's because there's something that's happening in me. So first, it's important to think, am I reacting to something that's happening in me? Is there some emotion that's driving it, or am I actually listening and being present to the person on the other side? So thinking about myself, what's happening, is an important part of it. And then the other part is just being curious for the other person. Help me understand. Might I ask a clarifying question? What is actually happening here, right? And so understanding curiosity, rather than rushing into judgment, oh, you should do X, but thinking, what kind of questions can I ask? That's a really important part of that. The key thing here, and I learned this as a parent, I don't know, my kids were middle school or something, and it was so impactful, and I wish I had known it earlier. But the key here is, don't tell anyone anything they already know. So they mess up. They break a bowl and it's scattered all over the kitchen. They arrive late from curfew. So many things that children do, or teenagers, as they grow, and they mess up. They do something they shouldn't have on their computer. It stops working, whatever. Instead of saying, well, you messed up, or you did this, or whatever, ask them about what they think happened. One of my favorite memories of this is my son had done something. I honestly don't remember what it was, but I was very upset. I just took a few deep breaths, a little bit of mindful breathing, and then I went in and I said, okay, can you just tell me my lecture on this? Because, tell me what you think I'm going to say. So he sat up and he told me everything I thought I was going to say. He pretty much nailed it. And I realized he already has my voice in his head. He already knows when he makes a mistake. He already knows the situation, what I wanted him to do, what I wished he could have done instead. And me telling him is not going to make a difference. Instead, some of the other things we'll talk about in a minute, that will help him understand really how to go about it further. But if people already know, and this happens with colleagues too, right? So one of my supervisees had come in and she had made a mistake with a contract and she came in. I don't need to say, you made a mistake with a contract. She already knows that. She already knows the situation. I can ask her, what do you think we should do now, right? What are the next step possibilities? Find out what are the limits of what their perspective and understanding is, because part of giving advice is being able to give a broader perspective than maybe the person has. But we don't know what that is unless we ask, which is why curiosity is the most important thing to start with. Feel free, as I said, to put questions in chat or raise your hand or just unmute yourself if you have something you want to say. This is interactive, but so if you have comments about that, stories you want to share, I'd love to hear them. Any questions? So that's the first tip. The second tip is noticing others. Seems obvious, but when we are in it with someone or in a situation when there's a conflict, something has happened, a big crisis, it's really easy to jump over and get in our own head about what we should do or what they should do and give the advice that we want. And we forget to notice where they are and where they're really at. Noticing others is really just, what am I noticing about the other person? What am I sensing and feeling about what's happening for them? So often when I step back in those situations, I can say, oh, my teenager has come in from school and they're feeling really sad about something, or they're feeling really upset, or my colleague, maybe something happened at work and we're in a meeting and they're off. They're just off. Maybe something happened before they got to work that morning, or other kinds of situation. People can be off all the time. So think about who they are, how they're presenting, what is the state of being, energy, their reactions, their word and tone of voice. And then also what's happening for me. Maybe I'm in a situation like I'm in a crisis, and then it's not the right time to me trying to give advice if I'm dysregulated, if my emotions are really high and I am not thinking clearly. Take some deep mindful breaths and then be in a different situation. But noticing what's happening with them and me is the best way. If we don't do that, we can't have a productive conversation. The key here is, are they in a space for listening? And if they're not, wait. No point, advice will never stick if they're not in a space for listening, if we are not, and if you're not in a space for listening. So try to engage from that place, right? That's the second major tip. Seems easy, but we can skip over these in our hurry to make the things right in the world. The third tip here is to engage in our third skill from dovetail learning on this, our second skill and our connection skill, heartfelt listening. And that's, if we're feeling apart, listen with my heart. That's the tagline for there. Feeling apart, listen with my heart. And we have to ask ourselves, how can I truly listen? How can I listen to truly understand what someone is trying to communicate? So people can share stories with us and we're not really listening. Is my heart open to their truth without judgment? Yesterday, I was on a phone call with a young man who was struggling in his marriage, and he was brave enough to reach out to my husband and myself for some conversation about that. And it was very powerful. And as we're sitting in there in the conversation, I'm thinking about, what can I add to, what kind of advice can I help this young man? And but first I had to, after I noticed, and he was definitely open, he was the one who initiated, he was open to listening, then I had to move into heart listening. What is he really trying to communicate about what's going on? Most people don't have the words to say what's actually happening with them. So I'm a words person. I react to people's words all the time. And I have to pause and be deliberate when I'm actually going to be heartfelt listening and listening underneath the words. And what are people really trying to say, right? That's listening judgmentally. Whatever is actually open to their truth, taking in what we're hearing and giving them space to share in an open, safe environment. Sometimes that's the most important advice we can give, is that we're a safe place for that person to talk about what they need to. That can be the best advice, that the world has a safe place for them, more than anything we do. Sometimes we want to be direct. It can be helpful to ask, what H do they want? Do they want to be heard, like this young man, and just felt, and maybe a hug, a virtual hug? We were on Zoom, and maybe they actually want specific help. Maybe they want specific advice. This particular person had been getting a lot of good advice, didn't really need something specific. And so he just wanted to be heard and he wanted a hug. He wanted to know other people in his life loved him, even as he was going through the struggles. And so understanding all of that, do we want to be heard, a hug, and help? And having that vocabulary so that we can share with the people that we love can really build a circle of trust. So understanding you can ask for any one of these things. So heartfelt listening involves asking which one would be helpful, right? Then our fourth tip here is really empathizing. Our hearts grow wise when we empathize. And that's really putting ourselves into the situation of what's happening for the other person. Oops, going backwards again. Ask ourselves, what does it feel like to be in this person's situation, right? So I have a friend who is arranging a wedding. We know so many components go into that, right? And so we're spending a lot of time talking about all the things that can happen and what my friend can do to make sure the arrangements goes perfectly as one, because of course she wants the most beautiful wedding possible. And it's easy when I get into that situation to start giving advice. Oh, you should do it this way and that way and this way. And it's important for me, again, first to notice, is she in a position to help, to listen, to what I have to say? And so I notice her, and then heartfelt listening. What's really happening for her? What kind of space? Sometimes when we talk, she's in a space that there's so much going on, she's overwhelmed. I can't add to it. Other times she's in a generative space, and what's going on with her is really happy. And then we have a different kind of conversation. Regardless, when I move to empathizing, it's like, oh yeah, there are a lot of emotions. All of our emotions are heightened when we're planning big events, whether it's a wedding or other kinds of things that involved a lot of family and friends. And that's when we really can move into empathizing, right? Okay. So empathizing involves cognitive empathy, understanding how others sees the world. What are they feeling? Why might they be feeling it? My friend is overwhelmed, but she's also happy at the same time. Those are the things I can understand. Emotional empathy is how is she feeling? And as I said, it moves into different places at different times. And then the third kind of empathy is compassionate action. It leads to action and support, and that we call a separate skill, choosing kindness, because it's so important. So how can empathy help us when we're giving advice? So when I'm with my friend and I'm thinking about the things, instead of saying, oh, we could do this, I say, when I was in that situation, when I was planning the 2 weddings that I was involved in, I remember feeling this way. Are you feeling that way? And kind of checking in with how she's feeling. And then we can have this connection around that. And then we can talk about things, and the advice I give makes sense at a deeper level, because I'm empathizing with her. We're really communicating on a deeper level. So is there any questions or comments on any of these tips before I move any further? Like I said, I love to see the chat. Anybody have any struggles around giving advice that I could gear some of this to? Please put it into the chat. I know a lot of times in webinars, you're listening when doing other things, but if you have something you'd like to say, I'd love to hear it. Okay. And I talk so fast that I know sometimes I don't leave room for that. Okay. So the key part about empathizing here is I learned that people will forget what you said. They will never forget what you did. And they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And this is why empathizing is so important, because sometimes the best advice you can give to someone, this is by Maya Angelou, by the way, the advice that really sticks is because you made them feel a certain way. You made them feel heard and seen and validated. Then your advice matters. When you give people advice and you don't do that, and you're not into empathy, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a professional situation, whether it's someone you supervise, whether it's a student in your classroom, when you don't make them when you don't make them feel seen and heard and valued, then the advice doesn't land. But when you do, and you make them feel wanted and welcome and trusting, then the advice has a possibility of landing. Still no guarantee. People have to live the life that they want to live, but it has a much bigger perspective. So think about the deeper trust that you're building. How do you make people feel? Sometimes the best advice, the one that sticks, is the one you don't actually say. Maybe you share a story that's happened to you that's simpler, that's similar, that connects the empathy, and maybe that's the advice that actually sticks. So the fifth tip here is speaking authentically. When authentically talk, hearts unlocked. How do we speak authentically? We speak authentically when we speak from our truth in the moment, when we're open, vulnerable, and kind, right? So for me, I can remember a situation that I had with a colleague earlier this year, and she was in conflict with another colleague, and it was very challenging. And I was like, how can I help in this situation, right? And for me, it requires centering myself to be grounded myself, which is why we have these 6 centering skills. We talk about all of this stuff, the We Are Resilient approach, lots of materials on our website, and we do a lot of webinars around all of these. So feel free to browse our website to get more information about these centering skills. But knowing that I'm centered, okay, I'm centered myself, so I'm not going to react out of my own issues when I'm trying to give advice to you about what's happening with you, right? So that's what part of speaking authentically is. And then we can give advice that actually matters. So we're speaking from an authentic place. We're speaking from a grounded place. We've heard that person. We've seen they're open to our advice. Then all the wisdom that's swirling around our head actually has a place to come out and has a way to be grounded, right? A way to connect with the other person. So very important there. And then the last tip here is actually noticing myself. Pause. What's the cause here? That's our tagline for noticing myself. It really involves being curious about ourselves. What am I noticing, sensing, and feeling? What emotions are happening in my feeling? What words can I say to myself? And are my protective patterns emerging? So I just gave you the example of a conflict a colleague was having with another one, and then I had to give advice on, like, how can these two people get along? What's the perspective from each one of them? And try to come up with words that can help people navigate that difficult situation. That is some situation my protective patterns might emerge. And another situation that will happen, of course, with my family members, my protective patterns are most likely to emerge when we're in situations with people we really care about because we feel more vulnerable. And our protective patterns are things that emerge when we feel unsafe, whether it's physically, emotionally, socially, mentally, economically, all those things. We feel a little bit vulnerable, our protective patterns emerge. So when I'm talking to my family members, especially if they come to me with some issue, I want to protect them, and then I feel a little vulnerable, and so my protective patterns might emerge, right? A common one that can emerge is hyper caretaking when we're in these kinds of situations. I know it's true for me. I know it's true for a lot of other people. And that's when we're trying to fix another person's emotional pain rather than accompanying them with it. It's very hard to see that people that we care about, whether it's family, friends, even colleagues. I was telling you about a colleague's conflict with another one. It's very hard to be in those situations and not feel the other person's pain and not just want to fix it. And that's our goal, to become centered ourselves so we don't have to try to fix other people's pains, because that protects them from the consequences of their behavior. But it also doesn't honor their own capacity and self-reliance to do what they want, to do what they need to do, and to build their own resilience. Our position really is that we have to let other people discover their own resilience. And our job in giving advice is just to help people tap into that. We all have it within them, even the people who are in the pain. So, for example, my daughter had called with a big issue for her. She was very upset. Right away, I just move into the tight. I know you all have felt it. Your stomach is clenched, your shoulders are clenched. You're like, okay, I'm on call. What can I do? Da, 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 da. She's sharing with me, and it's so hard not to just jump in and say, you're going to be okay. This is a great situation. I can fix it for you. You won't have any trouble. We want to fix other people's pain. That's part of hyper caretaking. And part of it is because it's so hard to hold the emotional distress of somebody else that we care about. But knowing that they have the capacity and our job is to sit there with them is really the best way we can give advice. Just sometimes to understand, oh, my job is not to fix it. My job is to sit there and accompany them. So what's the advice I could give? I can give a broader perspective. I can help, especially if after I ask those 8 questions, do you want to be heard? Do you want a hug? Do you want help? When I discern, oh, okay, she wants particular advice, then I can give it from that particular position. But knowing that I'm not going to be taking away her pain and doing that. All I'm doing is giving another window, and that she has the skills, she knows how to do this herself, and she will work through it, honoring her own capacity. So it's a tricky balance, empathizing with someone, giving them that emotional hug, and yet not jumping in to try to fix it. So understanding what's happening within ourselves is really an important part of giving all that advice. So what is the key here? Giving advice that sticks. If you only remember the one thing, it's the one thing that I started it with, and which is why I wanted to end with it as well. And that's curiosity. How can we be curious? Whether we're talking to colleagues, when I was talking to my colleague who was having an issue with another colleague, what's happening for you? What do you see as the situation here? What do you think her situation is? What can you guys do together? What are the different paths we can take forward? All those questions. It's really about what kind of questions that you can ask. When I was talking to my daughter, how did that situation occur? What do you think the options are? Where do you think you can go? What do you want from this conversation? When I was talking to the man who had the marriage situation, how can I help you? What do you think you need? Where are you going with this? All those questions, that's how someone gets to advice that sticks. So any other questions that you have for me? I'd love to answer them if you want to put them in the chat. As I said, what I gave you today was just a few snapshots from the We Are Resilient approach, how it connects to a particular problem you might be having in terms of giving advice that sticks. We have so many ways that this can help. The We Are Resilient approach is an approach. We have 3 resilient mindsets. They guide us in using the patterns and skills. Curiosity was the first one we talked about today. Choice and courage also can get involved. We talked about our protective patterns today. That's how we react to the world. We also have cultural patterns. That's how we view the world. Of course, all of these things intersect with each other, right? And we have our centering skills. We talked a little bit. Our connecting skills are what we really talked about today, because giving advice that sticks matters more when we can build relational resilience with the other person. And the last thing is group resilience, collaborating skills. So those are how we create the world that we need. And that's the whole framework that we use to handle all the things that come up, whether it's giving advice that sticks or other types of issues that we have. So we have a lot of resources that can show you more about the We Are Resilient approach. We have the book, and we're in the final stages, believe it or not, of getting the audiobook out, just listening to the final aspects of it, and hope to have it out soon if you're interested in the audiobook. We also have an advice column, comes out twice a week, and we talk about very specific things that people are having and how the We Are Resilient approach might help those things, help people with their perspective around them. It's just a fun, light way to kind of get ideas about how this all works. You can sign up on Substack, Ms. Resilient at substack.com. And we send it out on Tuesdays and Fridays. All of these slides I will be sending to you, so you'll be getting all this information. We have lots of digital resources. You can get our newsletters. Our newsletters are different than our advice column because they really talk about the webinars that are coming up, our new releases of products, the different places that we're working. And so it's a totally different type of information. They come out twice a month. All the materials that we send you, you can download them and use them for free. You can adapt them for use in your community. All we ask is that you give attribution and then you share back anything that you develop with our materials. So thank you for all your work, and thank you for being here today. If you have any questions or comments, would love to hear from you. So thank you. Thank you, Samantha. Thanks for the comment. I love it. Nice to have. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.